She will be leading our session. She will be leading our session today around business planning. Please place your questions in the Q&A tab, and we will get to those questions as soon as Ms. Hall completes her presentation. Any questions you have, you do not have to wait till the end to ask them. Just put them in the Q&A chat. I will be monitoring that chat. Also, want to remind you all that we will have these sessions twice a month, all the way through the month of July. And you can find the additional sessions at gptx.org/smallbiz. That's B-I-Z. You can also send me an email at dbrown@gptx.org. So with no further delay, Ms. Hull, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Let's get this up here. So hopefully you can see my screen. If you're having trouble seeing my screen, raise your hand or something so I can tell. Oh, it looks like it's working. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to speak with you all today. And when I was putting all of this together, there were so many things that I wanted to share with you. And so I've put a lot of extra information into this presentation, and I have asked Kate to share that with you if you're interested in having a copy. So I'll make those available to her and she can share them with you. So if we don't get through every little thing on these slides today, know that you'll have the details, and I'm happy to share them with you at a later date. We're going to try to get through as much as possible. And let's just kind of look at what we have planned here. So there's 4 things that I would like to address. One is the entrepreneurship lifestyle, and then some decisions that you have to make at startup. Missions, visions, and goals, how to write those and how to make sure that they flow together into helping you achieve your vision. And then the last thing is about the business plan. But given our limited time, I'm going to start with the last thing first. I'm going to start with the business plan so that we get ample time to go through the different components of the plan. And then we will move into the other 3 sections as time permits. Again, I have a lot of detail on these slides. I broke every rule of creating PowerPoint slides to make sure that you had the detail later when you needed it. So we'll start with the business plan. And I want to talk about the value of the business plan, why you need one. We're going to talk about how to find a template to use, a word about something that you may not have heard about, which is a business model canvas. And then sections of the traditional business plan, we'll go through each one of those, and I've made a comprehensive list of the different things that go into each section. So hopefully that will be of value to you. So first of all, I'm sure you know what the value of a business plan is, and that's why you're here today. But it's basically your blueprint to success. It is your plan. It's a method that allows you to capture all of the important analysis that you need to do before you launch your business. And so this is your roadmap. It's a place to refine your goals and your vision, and a place to write out your strategy and all of the different components of your business that will be. It is sometimes just a guess. Sometimes you don't know all of the information for sure, but what you want to do is do enough research that you make good, educated guesses. So we'll talk about marketing research a little bit later. That is a very important element of your business plan. It's only as good as the research you put into it. So these are some places that you can get a template. The first place is score.org. If you're not familiar with SCORE, SCORE is supported. It's kind of goes hand in hand with the Small Business Administration. But this is an organization that is run by a group of retired business executives. And they offer their services for free. You can get a mentor at SCORE, and they're very, very familiar with walking people through the SBA lending process, and otherwise just helping people with business plans and launches. They have, similar to what you guys are doing here in Grand Prairie, they have a lot of webinars, and they have a lot of face-to-face type seminars about all kinds of business topics. And most of those are absolutely free to attend. Their website has thousands, literally thousands of resources on it that are all free. Anything you could ever want to know about a small business is there. So I encourage you, if you've never checked that out, to check out score.org. They also have the template that I'm going to be explaining to you today. And what I like about their template is that there's a financial template that goes with it that will build the budgeting and the pro forma financial statements for you. So this is the one that I use with most of my business students when we're writing a full plan. Live Plan is a piece of software. It's not free, but it's not overly expensive. But it's a piece of software that you can online use to write your business plan. Both of these give you prompts for what you need to put in each section. And then there's another template that I like. It's Moby at My Own Business Institute at Santa Clara University. Their template is also free. I gave you the link there if you wanted to look at that one. And then we also offer all kinds of assistance through Dallas College. We have a venture center, a small business development center, and some of those things may be available to you as well in Grand Prairie. But I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of some of the things that we offer. We also have a certificate and degree program in entrepreneurship at Dallas College. So this is something that you may not have heard about, and I want to talk about it before I talk about the business plan, because this is kind of a becoming methodology that I think is very helpful to new entrepreneurs. So this, when you go through and write a full business plan, that business plan is lengthy. It takes a lot of time to write, and you spend hours and hours putting this thing together, getting it perfect, with the goal of taking it to a banker or an investor and, pitching it and hoping that they'll fund your idea. What's tough about that situation is you spend all this time and then you take it, and if it's not something that they're interested in, then you have spent all this time and you don't have a product that really gets you to the next step. So I like the lean business model canvas idea as an interim step to writing the business plan. Many bankers and investors will look at this. They won't lend off of it, but they'll at least validate your idea and tell you it's something they're interested in, and they would love to look at a plan. So if you would like to kind of take an intermediary step, I think this is a wonderful step. If you're an entrepreneur that is not looking for funding and you're writing the business plan for yourself, you may find that going through this process gives you enough of a structure that you're comfortable without writing all the details. So everything that's important is included on these, but as you can see, instead of paragraphs and pages, it's more of a listed type function. And it's a little bit different way to think about your business plan. I like it as an intermediate step, especially if this is your first business plan. Use the canvases, and then if the idea validates out, then go in and write the plan. So if you use this, it has 3 different canvases in it. This is the lean model canvas, and this is the one for startups. So you can see here, there's several different segments here that you would work through, and there's a process for working through those. There's information about this out at score.org if you're interested in learning more about it. This isn't really what I was asked to share with you, but I wanted to present it as an option for you as a medium step. So the second canvas, once that idea is validated, the second canvas is a little bit different information. But again, you can see just kind of a 1-page document. And when you complete this one, you also add this value proposition canvas, which helps you to complete, to make sure that you have a compelling product for your customer that meets the customer's needs. So I just wanted to mention these. We don't have time to really go through them today, but I wanted to make you aware that they exist. For this one, I gave you an example of Tesla's value proposition. I thought you might find that interesting. So let's work through the business plan. The very first section in a business plan is the executive summary. And I like to think of this as when you submit a resume, when you're looking for a job and you put the cover letter with the resume, the goal of the cover letter is to get the person's interest so that they want to finish reading your resume and consider you for an interview. So this executive summary is kind of like your cover letter. This is the first thing that someone's going to see when they open your business plan. It is the first thing they're going to see, but it's the last thing you're going to write. The way this works, you write the whole business plan, and then you come back and you summarize the key pieces of the business plan into a 1 to 2 page document that hits the high points and the most important details. All your nitty-gritty details are in the document itself. So this is just designed to give them a basic understanding of what your business is doing, who it's serving, and its potential, and then get them interested enough to want to read the other 50 or 60 pages of your plan. So that's the purpose of this. It has an overview, 1 to 2 sentences. You're going to describe your product, including the problem that you're solving for your customer. You're going to list your major milestones for at least the first year. Recommend first and 3 years. If you can go 5 years out, that's kind of a long time in today's world, the way things change. But I would say try to get your major milestones for years 1, 2, and 3. And then your proposed target market, who your ideal customers are. You're going to talk a little bit about your competition and why your customers would choose you instead of the competition. That's your unique value proposition. You're going to talk about your management team. And basically what you're trying to show here is that you have a competent management team in place that can help you be successful. And then there will be kind of a summary of your financial overlook. So it might say something along the lines of, we are requesting this much capital, we're going to use it for these things, and we expect our 1 year, first, second, and third year results to be whatever they are, minimal losses, some profit, whatever they are. And it's normal for small businesses to lose money in the first couple of years. So if your projections come out with a loss, it's okay to say you're going to have a loss in the first year. What you want to do is show that you're growing. The second part of the business plan is the company description. And this is where you're going to give your reader an understanding of your mission, your vision, your values, your goals, your target market, your industry, your competitors, and how you're going to structure your business. So this has a lot of just background information on your business. Again, we alluded to that in the executive summary, and we're going to put the details in this section. So you'll put your mission statement, your philosophy, which really is just kind of your values statement, your vision, and your company goals. Now, I want to talk about goals in a little while when we get to it, but it's very important that your goals are written well so that it's very clear what your major milestones and steps are going to be going from today to your vision for the company. So those need to be very clearly written. And I recommend, you can't put every goal you're going to have, but I would say, think about how you want to go from where you are today to where you want this business to be, which is your vision in the future. And think about the major things that have to happen between now and then for you to reach that vision. Those are your major milestones. And those are the things that you need to document here. Basically, you're creating kind of a timeline for how you're going to go from where you are today to where you want to be in the future. Your target market are those customers who you are going to try to sell to, who you think are most likely to buy your product. So this is a section where you're going to talk about who they are, what their characteristics are, and those types of things. It's a brief explanation here. When we get into the marketing plan section, you're going to go into a lot more detail into the actual characteristics of those target customers. One word about target customers. A lot of times I'll ask someone, who's your target customer? And they'll say, oh, everybody needs my product. And while you may think everybody needs your product, everybody probably wouldn't buy your product. So you don't want to waste your time and your marketing dollars reaching people who are never going to buy. So this is a huge step to really spend a lot of time really figuring out who are the people that are most likely to buy and where are they and what characteristics do they have and how can you find them. And that is where a lot of time should be spent so that you're really targeting your work and your marketing goals of reaching people to the right group of people. You're also going to do an industry analysis. You're going to talk about whether the industry that you are entering is growing or not. Is it have some trends that are going on in there? If so, how are you going to take advantage of those? How competitive are you? How much market share do you think you're going to be able to get? So a very heavy analysis of your industry would go in this section. So while it has a little paragraph up here on the screen, it would be given a lot of room in your business plan. And then your legal structure is really how you're going to establish your company. So are you going to be a sole proprietorship, a corporation, an LLC, a partnership? You're going to talk about the owners. If there's more than one owner, you want to talk about how it's divided. If you have a partnership, I would probably include the key elements of the partnership document in the appendix. And then if you are selling shares of stock, then you would want to talk about how that works and how many shares are owned by investors. So this is just a really in-depth picture of your company. Oh, I missed it, didn't I? Hold on. There we go. Sorry. So the next section is about your products and services. So here you're going to talk about what you sell, and you're going to go into detail about how you make it or how you get it. So you're going to talk about if it's something that you manufacture or make, then you'll talk about that process of how you do that, what's required. You'll talk about any important relationships. So if you have some partnerships with suppliers or distribution channels or something like that, you would talk about that here. You're also going to talk about why people want to buy your product. And people buy products because it solves a problem for them. It meets a need in their life. And sometimes they buy things because it's something they want, but a lot of times they buy something because it meets a need in their life. So we want to really talk about that here. What problem are you solving, and how are you solving that problem for the customer? You'll talk about the benefits that you provide and that unique value proposition. That is the thing that makes you different than your competition. It is why someone would choose you instead of the competition. And everybody needs 1 to 3 of these. So if you don't know what yours is, spend a little bit of time thinking about how you can make your offering different than your competition and more valuable to the customer. And again, why your solution's better would be addressed here. If you have anything proprietary that gives you a competitive advantage, you want to talk about that as well. Some examples might be if you have a patent on something, or you have some exclusive agreements with suppliers or vendors to sell something that nobody else can sell, or a form of something that no one else can sell. Sometimes people will hold certain licenses, or they'll have certain expertise that's very difficult to find in the market. So those are all types of things that might provide a competitive advantage that you would want to share in your business plan. And then finally, you're going to describe the pricing model that you're going to choose, how your pricing compares to your competition, and how it's going to help you attract customers, and then how much of a profit margin you expect to enjoy based on the structure that you have chosen. So this is kind of what you're going to talk about for products and services. In the marketing plan, now this is the biggest section of your plan. I had to devote 3 screens to this to get it all in place. So hang with me here, but this is probably the most important piece of the plan aside from your projected financials. And what you put in this piece really kind of drives your financial performance. So you have to do a lot of research in this piece to make sure that you have done a thorough analysis. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to show your research. You're going to talk about what research you did. Primary research is research that you do yourself, and secondary research is research that you get from someone else, like maybe an industry association or the government census or something like that. That would be secondary information. So you want to do some research, and you want to show how big is your market. This is, you want to know how many players are in the market, how many dollars are spent in the market annually. Are there any trends in the market? How big is it dollar-wise? Market share, how much do you think you can get? Again, the name of the game with a new business is you're trying to earn market share. And the strategy is to figure out how the easiest way to get the market share. Basically, if it's an existing product in an existing market, you're having to figure out how to get market share away from other people if people are already buying this product. So this part of the name of the game is market share here. You're trying to figure out how to get as much as you can. So you want to talk about that. How much do you really think you can get, and how much is that going to increase over time? Maybe for the first, second, and third year, how do you expect that to increase? Barriers to entry are things that make it hard to enter the market. So if you think about what's making it difficult for you to get started in the market, those are the barriers to entry. And they're important because if they're barriers to entry to you, they're also barriers to entry to your any other people who are wanting to enter, right? Anybody who would be a future competitor. So we like to have you address these barriers. And number one, state that you realize they exist and what they are. And then you yourself are going to give a plan. How will I overcome each of these things? And in your mind, you know that these are things, if there's something I have to overcome, if someone else wanted to enter the market, they would also have to overcome them. So whoever can overcome them first and best, will kind of get the head start here. So it's a good thing to think about. So some examples of barriers to entry would be if it costs a whole lot of money to start up, then fewer people would be able to have that type of funding to actually start. If it needs some sort of specialized technology or specialized expertise, that can be a barrier that you have to overcome. Or if you perhaps hold that special expertise, then that would be, hey, I've already overcome this barrier and it's going to be hard for other people. So this is good. This is working in my favor. Finding qualified employees, if it's some very specific types of skills that you need, can be a difficult task. And then being able to reach the market, maybe it costs a lot to actually reach your customers, your target customers, then that could also be a barrier. There's many other things that could be a barrier. If you just sit and think about what makes it hard to start a business in your space, those are the things that you would list in that section. In the next section, you want to do a SWOT analysis. This section in the business plan template calls for threats and opportunities. But really what we want to do is we want to think about our strengths and our weaknesses. And then we also want to think about the threats and opportunities that we will face in our new business. And a lot of times I like to sit and think about, okay, how can these strengths that I have help me overcome the weaknesses and help me overcome the threats? So you want to have a plan for these threats. And if you have trouble figuring out what the threats are, almost always there is a threat in these 4 areas for a company. So government regulations can be a threat. If something changes, if something new comes to light, environmental type laws and regulations are one thing that sometimes happens to people. Technology, a change in technology, a technological change that might make your product obsolete. Some of those things you need to think through. The economy obviously is a big one. If the economy is not doing well, then that's not good for most of us. And then anything that's going on in the industry that might threaten your ability to be successful. So this needs a lot of thought, and this is just kind of a lot of internal reflection about your business. And then looking out there to say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen and how will I deal with it? Then we have, oops, I did it again. We have the product, service, features, and benefits. You're basically going to talk about from the customer's point of view. Earlier, we talked about the product in the product section, and that was from our business point of view. In this marketing section, we're going to talk about it from the customer's point of view. What do they think is the most important feature and what's special about it? And what are these benefits and what do they do for the customer? We're also going to go into a lot of detail, like I mentioned earlier, about that target customer. If you're not familiar with buyer personas, this is a way to really kind of hone in on that target customer. Basically, there's these little icons or graphics that people create that represent their target customer. And so they'll have these little graphic people and they'll say, you know, this is Betty and she works here and she's this age and she has 4 kids and she likes to sew and all the things that, you know, kind of fit this concept of an ideal customer. And usually you build 2 or 3 of those, and that kind of gives you like a picture of who you're going to market to and who you think is the most likely type of person to buy your product. So this is just a way, if you don't want to do the buyer persona, you don't have to include that here, but it is kind of a common thing and a common way for people to share who they're targeting. Either way, you want to give a lot of description about the target customer and you want it to be narrow. I have students all the time that tell me, you know, everybody needs my product. And I had a student that her business was to sell like hair extensions. And so when I asked her who was her customer, she said, everybody who has hair. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, everybody can use hair extensions. And I said, well, my 85-year-old mother has hair, but I don't think she would buy your hair extensions. So you have to hone in on who is likely to really buy them. And besides that, even if it was everybody with hair, how is she going to possibly deal with everybody who has hair in some third world country or something like that, right? So it just doesn't make sense to say everybody. And an investor or someone looking at your plan will be like, no, that's not right. So really think about who is most likely to buy your product. That's where you want to focus your effort and your money at reaching people. Competitor analysis, this is going to be a very thorough piece as well. You want to pick the top competitors in your area that are your biggest threats. And you want to spend a little time explaining who they are, how they compete. Do they compete across the board? Do they only compete on specific products? Are they only in certain areas? How impactful is their competition? And then you also need to think about indirect competition. So these are people that don't sell your exact product, but they might sell something that people could use instead. So an example of an indirect competitor would be, I used to own a bakery and people would come in for something sweet, right? A dessert. And what I noticed was in the summertime, a lot of my regular people didn't come in as often. And what I found out was that they weren't really there for the cake. They were there for something sweet. And they had other options for something sweet down the street in the form of a snow cone or an ice cream. So, even though I would never have considered the ice cream store my competition, it was my competition in certain seasons, and it was an indirect competitor, and it did impact my sales. And so it was something that I needed to think about. So you need to think about, are there any of those in your situation that might affect you? Next, we have any factors that are important to your customers where you have an advantage. You're trying to sell the fact with this business plan that you have something unique about your business that's going to entice customers to buy from you. So every opportunity in this plan that you have to reiterate what's special about you and what's special about your product, you need to take advantage of that. So this is competitor analysis is another great place to kind of hit that again with, hey, here's what's special about us. Positioning. This is kind of a hard concept to understand sometimes, but I like to think about it like this. Positioning is how I want people to think of my company or my product. So do I want known as the highest quality, the least expensive, the most perfect customer service? What do I want when people see my name and my logo and my product? What do I want them to think of my company and my product? That's your position. And that is what you have to communicate in your marketing messages. And it's how everything you do marketing related should reflect this position that you're trying to give yourself in the market. How you're going to market, you'll also explain like what tools are you going to use? How are you going to advertise and market? So online, print, radio, website, social media, email, search engine optimization, all of those things are ways to market your product, and there are many more, but I put a few up here for you just as examples. And then what you have to do is you have to say, okay, all that stuff's going to cost money. So all these advertising plans up here are going to cost money. So the next thing you have to include in here is what's your budget for this expenditures? How much are you going to spend on marketing and advertising? And typically we look at this on a monthly basis for the first year. You can go on out to years 2 and 3 if you would like, but the first year for sure. And you're going to list your expenses that you're going to incur before startup. So if you're going to get signage or business cards or things like that, that would be a pre-startup expense. And then you'll provide ongoing expenses for every month that you're in operation. And you're just going to lay out how much you're going to pay for advertising every month. How much am I going to pay for maybe website maintenance every month? How much am I going to pay for social media ads every month? And you'll just land that out. You'll be able to see a total advertising cost per month. And then at the end of the year, you'll have, this is how much I plan to spend for the year. This is important to capture in great detail because that's going to feed into your expenses in your overall financial statements that you're going to create at the end of the business plan to prove up your concept. So this is a kind of an intermediary step to the business financial templates. Your marketing plan, pricing model, this is going to be a little bit more in detail. We hit it in a summary form a little bit earlier. Here you're going to actually share the model and the strategies and how it compares to the competition. You're also going to talk about how important price is to your customers. Now, there's some products out there where people don't care about the price. They'll pay whatever for it. They want it, they'll pay for it. There's other things that are very price sensitive. So we want to make sure that we are putting all of that type of information in here. Also, if we're going to extend credit policies, we want to make sure that we say how we're going to offer credit to our customers and how much that's going to end up costing us. Your location is your actual physical location. If you don't have one yet, you should propose one. You know, maybe I'm looking at this retail center in this area of the city for these reasons, and you want to make sure that you have a convenient place for customers to access it. Is it easy to turn into the parking lot, or do they have to go to make a U-turn? Is there enough parking? Is it close to public transportation, if that's something that would be important to your business, either for employees or customers? The type of space, is it retail? Is it industrial? Is it, you know, some standalone somewhere in a certain location? And then what types of business are nearby? We also want to know that because sometimes those can feed into your business. And then your justification. Why did you choose this? And those items that are listed above that are pretty much the reasons why you would choose a location. Distribution channels. How are you going to get your product to your customers? Are you going to sell it direct? Are you going to sell it through Amazon? Are you going to make partnerships with some retail outlets to carry your product? You need to explain how that's going to happen and what those relationships are going to be and what you think those relationships are going to cost. So those are all things that you would share. This distribution is how do I get it from manufacturer to the hands of the customer when they want it. And then your last thing is your 12-month sales forecast. This is another little baby step to your financials. So just like we did with the marketing expenses, we're going to show how much sales revenue we expect to get every month. So this should list all of your product categories. And then you would show how many items and how much revenue you would get in each product category for each month. And then you would have a total revenue for each month would then flow out to your total revenue and total number of units sold for each product for the year. So again, a baby step. This feeds into the revenue piece of your financial statements. All right, moving on. We made it through the marketing plan. So moving on to the operational plan. In this, we're going to talk about how we're going to operate the business. How are we going to run it? So we're going to talk about how we're going to produce things, the equipment we're going to use, how much it's going to cost us to produce it, how are we going to ensure quality, the quality and consistency of our products, because as you know, that's really an important feature. And then your physical locations, this will be actually the type of building that you're going to build out, the zoning restrictions, the size of the building, and then any associated costs. So your rent, your maintenance, your utility connections, your insurance, all of those things have to be specified as to what those are kind of part of your startup costs. Then you're also going to think through your legal environment, what applies to your business. So do you need licenses or permits? Do you need to get some trademarks in place so nobody steals your ideas? What kind of insurance is going to be required by your landlord, and then also to protect your business? Are there environmental regulations that apply to you or industry regulations? And then in certain industries, if it's some sort of a service like house cleaning or something like that, you might need to have bonding. So those are all things you need to think about and put those explanation of those things that are valuable to your business. Then the last section in this operational plan is personnel. This is kind of like your human resources plan. And again, it's pretty robust here if you do it right. And it kind of makes sense to do it right in the first place, because then you don't have to think about it later if you have a good plan at the beginning. So this is where you're going to really think through, what are all the different jobs that I'm going to have in this business, all the different roles that people are going to fill. And for each of those roles, you would create a job description. Even if it's just going to be you at the beginning, it's not always going to be you, right? That's the goal, that it's not always you. So you want to think about, as it grows, what types of jobs will you have, and what types of employees will you need? What characteristics and skills will you need for each of those jobs? So those job descriptions are generally included in the appendix of your business plan, and you would reference them here. You would also list any licensing or educational requirements. Are you going to use freelancers or independent contractors? That is something you have to be very careful with, because the IRS has some very strict rules about that. So if you are going to use independent contractors, I recommend that you make sure you get some advice about that and make sure you don't get into trouble with it. A lot of companies do it because they don't want to pay the taxes for the employee, but at the end of the day, it does end up biting them at the end. So that's something I would really look carefully into if it's something that you're thinking that you want to do. All right, pay structure, how are you going to pay them? How are you going to find them, recruit them, get them to come? How are you going to get them to stay? How are you going to train them? All of that also fits into this plan. You're going to also talk about your inventory, how much inventory you're going to keep, what's the value of it, are there any seasonal effects on your inventory, and how long does it take to get it? How often do you expect to turn it, which means how often will you get it and sell it? So those are all like types of measurements that we look for in inventory. Suppliers, anybody that's a key supplier that's critical to your success, you would list and tell what they supply and how much of it and what your payment terms are with them. Do you have to pay in advance? Do you get to pay in 90 days? That type of thing. You want to talk about any expected shortages or delivery issues that you are aware of and how you'll address those. And then credit policies, what credit policies will you offer to your customers? How are you going to check to make sure they're credit worthy? What's your plan if they don't pay? All of those types of things will be included in that section. The next section is basically talking about your management and organization. This is where you get the chance to show that you have a really good qualified team in place. So you're going to put biographies from all your key employees, and also their resume should be put in the appendix. You're going to identify any skills that are necessary for your success that the key employees don't have. And it's okay to have these gaps. A lot of people think that it's a bad thing if they have gaps, but it's not. You know, if it's just you and you don't know how to do accounting, then that's a gap. But your plan to fill that gap is to hire an accountant. So if you have the gap, you want to go ahead and talk about it, and then you want to say what you're planning to do to fill the gap. Advisors are just anybody that you're going to look to for advice. If you're a corporation, you'll have a board of directors. That would be your advisors. If you're not a corporation, then you may put together some people that have knowledge that are willing to help you, or you may use like accountants and attorneys and insurance agents and things like that. So whoever you're going to use, you would list here, and then you would create an organizational chart that reflects all those jobs that you said earlier you were going to have and you created the job descriptions for. And if you don't have anybody in that role in the first year, you just put to be announced later, and you fill in the roles that will be in place for the first year. And just note that that's a first year organizational chart. Your startup and financial plan, this is the money piece. So you're going to have two pieces to this. This is the first spreadsheet or template would be your startup expenses. What is it going to take for you to get started? What are you going to have to buy? What are you going to own? How much money are you going to need from different investors? And where are you going to get that money? So how much of it's going to be your own? How much of it's going to be from mom and dad? How much of it's going to be from the bank? How much of it's going to be on your credit cards? But basically this process helps you to identify all the money you're going to need and all the investment you've already made. So if you have things that are going to be part of the business that you already own, then those would show up as assets. So this piece generates the funding picture, how you're going to fund it, how much you're going to need. Also, when you're thinking about startup, you need to make sure that you have opening day cash, right? Because people think, oh, I need this much money to start, but they don't think about how much they need in the bank to carry them for the first few months until they start making some good sales. So you need to also add in some startup cash into that number. And you'll add this will be a part of your financial statements, and then you will have an opening day balance sheet that shows your assets, your liabilities, and your owner equity at the day one point. Your financial plan then this is the template that I was talking about at SCORE. It's actually a spreadsheet that's already programmed, and you just plug in numbers to it, and it will calculate your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow. And you can do it for the first year, or you can apply growth rates, so it'll project out to 3 and 5 years if you would like to see that. I would say of these three, an investor or banker is going to want to see all of them. This is the picture of whether you're going to make money or not and how you're going to grow. And so all these ideas that you just built into this business plan now come to fruition in the form of numbers on this financial plan. And at the end of the day, you either make money or you don't. You're either growing the business or you're not. And if you're not, the first iteration of this shows you're not, then you have to go back and say, okay, what do I need to change about my strategy? What do I need to change about my plan? I need to sell, 3 times as much. How will I do that? Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. You just need a different plan to do it. So you have to, these numbers are the tell-all of all of the information that you've built in the plan prior to that. So this will generate your financial statements that then will show the effect of your plan. All right, so I've made it through. That is the entrepreneur, that's the business plan sections. I hope that was helpful. And I hope the detail on the slides is helpful to you as you move forward. All right, so let's move on to, what do I have? About 17 minutes left, is that right? I'm going to click through some of these. I may skip a few, but if you would like to have the slides, then we'll make those available to you. So I want to start with,
Penny?
if you're just, yes.
We had a question. I didn't want you to get moved from the
Okay.
business plan. So I
Okay.
wanted to ask the question because it's related to the business plan. The question is, if
Okay.
you already have an existing business, but you never did a business plan for, do you recommend still doing one? And if so, are there any components you suggest that they should focus on more than others?
Okay, so a business plan is a strategy document, right? So let's think about who is the business plan written for. Obviously, if you need funding, the business plan is written to get funding, right? To give you the story to pitch and the financials to back it up. But the business plan has other uses. I've been involved in several large companies, and every year we went through a strategic planning process, which basically was revamping our business plan, making sure that our strategy was on point for growing and getting where we wanted to go and achieving those milestones. So I think that if you have an existing business, this is something that you look at every year. I mean, that's how I do it. Now, you may not change the whole plan every year, but you're at least making some adjustments and tweaks because things are going to change in your business environment. So number one, yes, I think I would write one. Now, if you have a successful existing business and you're not looking for funding, then maybe you think about the business model canvas as an initial approach. But the other users of this document are obviously your company leadership from a strategic point of view. This is a document that's living. It keeps going every year, every month. You're thinking about this. You're measuring to it. But another way that this business plan can be useful is with your key leaders and your key employees, and even employees in general. If your employees and your leaders know where you're going and they understand this plan, here's the steps from today to tomorrow, and we want you to be a part of tomorrow. If they have access to that information and you share it, that's, we talk a lot about transparency in business. If you share that information, it helps them to internalize their role and how important they are in helping you achieve that vision. So I think the business plan has a lot of uses outside of just funding. Personally, as a strategic document, I think you can't beat it. Is it worth the work? Yes. I mean, if you have a business that's already started and you want to grow it, use the business plan type idea to make a growth plan. There's a kind of a separate template for a growth plan if you wanted to just do a growth plan, but it's very similar. So yeah, I vote yes. All right. Anything else about business plans before we go on? Okay, for those of you just starting on your journey, I wanted to offer kind of some thoughts about how to get started and how to approach things in a little different way than you may have thought about. A lot of people start a bit, they get a product idea and they think, oh, everybody wants this product, I'm going to go sell this product. And because they like the product and they think it's great, they think everybody else is going to. And then they might start the business and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. But if it does, a few years go down the line and they're tired of it. And it's not fun anymore or whatever. And they have a hard time kind of going the distance with it. And I think a lot of times it's because we don't start with the right thought process when we're designing how we're going to do business. So I want to talk about that for just a minute, because I think that this is one of the most important things that you could think through. So I think you have to start with, what's your purpose? What is it that you personally are all about? What makes up your commitment to this venture? And we know that when people start a new venture, there's two pieces to their commitment. There's that initial motivation that says, I want to start my own business. And if I ask you why, if we had a poll up here, why do you want to start your new business? A lot of people would say, I don't want to work for another company anymore. I want to be my own boss. I want to be in control of my time. I want to do what I want to do. And that is a major majority of why people start businesses. And it's a valid, fine reason to start a business. And it's exciting. I've been there myself. You know what? I'm going to do my own thing. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. And then the other piece that has to be there beyond that, because that motivation can die. That motivation struggles when things get hard. So the other piece to the commitment needs to be your purpose. And finding that purpose gives you a reason to keep pushing through and not give up and not get tired of it, because you have a bigger something out there that makes you continue to drive. So I'm a huge fan of two components of your commitment. Yes, the initial motivation is great, but that purpose is really important. I think of it as it bridges the gap between when you started the business and your success. There's going to be this road in here that is very bumpy. And if you talk to any entrepreneur, I have never talked to one who said the road was not bumpy and it wasn't depressing at times. So I'm a big fan of finding your purpose, and I want to share with you a way that you can do that. Additionally, I put some stats up here. Business with a built-in purpose is 80% more likely to outperform the market. This is something people don't do. It makes common sense, but they don't do it. And customers are 4.5 times more likely to champion your company if it has a purpose. Think of some things you buy. Sometimes you buy from companies that have a good purpose, right? So it is a very good element to think about. This is I love this chart because this is so true, but this is pretty much how it feels to be an entrepreneur. If you've already started a business, you probably could give me a thumbs up here. But there's just days that are super hard, and then there's days that are just exciting and so joyful. And eventually you get to that great place where everything's running smoothly and it's great. But there's this road along the way where I really think that a purpose comes in to help. All right, so how do you find this purpose? This is a Venn diagram. You've probably seen one of these before, and you'll notice it has 3 circles. So we have interests, we have skills, and we have impact. And you'll notice that where interests and skills overlap, those are your passions. So the things that you do well and that you're interested in, those kind of come together to be a passion. And then if we think about your impact, what impact do you want to leave on the world? What difference do you want to make? Those things are important. So to do this little activity, you make a list of every interest you have, and the longer the list, the better. You do the same thing for your skills. What are you good at? List those skills. And then your impact. How do you want to leave your mark on the world? What do you want to leave? How do you want to impact the world? And then what you do is you start looking for, where do these things overlap? So the first place to look is, okay, what am I really passionate about? What can I see myself spending my life working toward? And those are usually a combination of things you're good at and things you're interested in, right? And if you're going to start a business, you want it to be something you're interested in, and you want it to be something you're good at. So that's a great place to start finding your purpose. Then we look at, how would that overlap with the impact that I want to make in the world? And so when you find that, you get this small triangle right here. That is the overlap of your interests, your skills, and your impact. And that is your purpose. That's that thing that's going to keep you going. So I want to give you an example. This is from one of my students' business plans this last semester. So and I didn't give you his whole list, right? But his main thing that he chose for his interest was, he loves to stream on Twitch. If you know what that is, that's a very popular thing right now. And then his skills and activities, the ones that he chose, were writing music and using Adobe Illustrator. And then his passion was, how could I combine those? How could I combine this streaming thing that I love with what I'm good at? And so he said, well, write and play music on Twitch. So he could write the music and stream it on Twitch. That makes a good sense, right? And that's something he felt he could be very passionate about doing. And then he said, but the impact I want to have on the world is, I want to help depressed kids. He said, I grew up in a very depressive state, and it took a long time for me to get out of it. And I want to help kids who are experiencing depression. It's a great impact to have in the world. And so then he had to start thinking, how can I take this music, the streaming, the kids with depression? How can I put all that together in a package? And so he ended up with his purpose being to create a YouTube channel to help kids process depression by writing music. And he could use the Twitch stream to basically make his service known to others. So I thought he did a great job of combining all these three circles, and that maybe that might help you see how this works. I really encourage you, if you haven't thought through something like this, to spend a little time with that. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip the myths and realities. You can read through these. I put pretty good explanations here, but people say, oh, you only need a good idea, or entrepreneurs are born. That's not true. Entrepreneurship is a learned skill. So anybody can be an entrepreneur. You just have to practice that skill like you would practice the piano, right? It's the more we do it, the better we get. So I'm going to leave those for you to check out. Oh, let me hit one. The quitting is for losers thing. A lot of people think you start this business, you write this plan, you better stick to it because you put a ton of work into it and you can never quit, just keep going. But that's not true. Sometimes the best thing to do is walk away, learn from the experience and revamp and go again. Most entrepreneurs I know had to do 2 or 3 things before they found something with good legs. So don't be afraid to quit. Know the right time to walk away and learn the lessons from it and then go again. So I just want to point that out because I know a lot of people feel like, oh, I can't quit. I've put so much into this, but you didn't lose anything, but you've learned a lot going through that type of process. Entrepreneurs, one of the biggest myths is that they're born, or they all have the same personality, or they all have the same characteristics. And they're basically they're peas in a pod, right? They're all the same. And it might surprise you to know that there's absolutely no evidence, researched evidence that proves that. So there's a lady named Saravati, and she started researching that for herself. And what she found was she researched with serial entrepreneurs, meaning that they had started multiple businesses and started multiple businesses at a time. So she picked their brains a little bit. And what she found was they all had different sets of characteristics. Some were extroverts and gregarious, others were introverts, some were detail minded, some were big picture minded. They were all over the map, just like you and I are. But what she did discover is they had a different mindset about their business. They had what she calls an entrepreneurial mindset. And these people, instead of trying to find a market to get into or find a niche, they actually create the market and create the niche. They go beyond what most people do, and they try to make their own way. That way they're not chasing market share, they're creating market share. It's easy to have all the market share when you create it. So they accept and learn from failure. They build relationships with a bunch of different types of stakeholders, and they use their own initiative and resources to accomplish their goals. So one of the things I found most interesting about this is that most of them didn't go out asking for a lot of money. Now, obviously, if they're serial entrepreneurs at this point, they have money. But in the beginning, they took baby steps. They used the resources that they had, and they took actions with those resources. And they took those small actions along the way, just put, like I would say, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And as they began to take those steps, it generated additional resources that they could then invest in the next steps. So they took kind of a slow go approach to building the business and not getting themselves highly leveraged along the way, so that if they did have a setback, they didn't have a financial setback as well. So I thought that was really interesting. And this concept of this mindset and how different they are, that's really the difference. It's not characteristics or personalities. Okay, let's talk about a few decisions that entrepreneurs need to think about. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one either, but you need to think about, am I going to sell a product or a service? What's the difference? And so I've listed some items to think about on the left side here, like, what do you trade? Well, obviously sell product. You trade product for cash, or you trade your skills and knowledge if you're selling a service. How much does it cost to start up? It costs a lot more to start up a product-oriented business than a service-oriented business. How easy is it to scale it, make it bigger and bigger and bigger? Well, obviously the product is easier to scale because I can design it once and sell thousands of them. But the service is kind of a customized thing that's, special for each specific customer. It's harder to replicate on a major scale. Management skills are a little different. You can start up a service business pretty quick, immediately. It takes a little time to do a product business because you've got to get the prototypes and the designs and the testing and all of that kind of thing. You got to order the equipment, you got to build out the space. So that product-oriented business takes a little more time to get up and going. Risk is different, repeatability is different, profit's different, and I've noted some of those differences here for you that you can take a look at. But there's one thing you might not have thought about. Sometimes we combine products and services. We sell both. And these are some ways that you could think about doing that. So sometimes if I can add another layer to my product or service, it adds additional value to the customer, which can be that competitive advantage that makes them want to choose me. So we can make them complementary where they need each other to survive. So when I bought my car, it had an XM satellite radio in it, but I did never sign up for the service. So I owned this radio, but I couldn't use it because I didn't have the service. So once I was able to buy the service, the radio became more valuable to me. So that's how a product and a service could go hand in hand to bring additional value to the customer. There's other ways independent, like you could buy a copier. You don't have, the copier works just fine without the maintenance. But if I add the maintenance, that can add value to the customer in terms of convenience and uptime and things like that. So you want to think through some of those caveats for your business. Is there a way to add a complementary layer that would bring additional value that might help customers choose you? These are some examples of different types of hybrid offerings, and I'm just going to leave those there for you to look at. And I've put a couple of different examples for each one underneath them. So then let's talk about who is your customer. And I know we have like 2 minutes, but let me just say this. Your customer is the person who has the problem that you're trying to solve. So number one, they have the problem you're trying to solve. Number two, you can reach them. Number three, there's enough of them for you to make a living. And those are the things that are most important about identifying that target customer. And you want to make it, again, I spoke to this in the business plan, to make it very narrow. You want to be the people that you are most likely to reach and convince to buy. And then I gave a little bit of information here about early adopters. The easiest way to get started is to find early adopters. And I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to go quick. An early adopter is a person who has the problem that you solve. They know they have the problem and they're already trying to fix it. So if I solve a certain problem, I might go to where people would be trying to solve that problem, and I might talk to them and kind of pitch my idea and see if it would be something that would solve their problem. So you can find these early adopters by finding people that are already trying to solve the problem, but they're not successful because they don't have your product. So you want to find those people first because they will buy. If they have the problem, they're already trying to solve it, and you have a solution, they'll buy it. And that gets people selling in the door for you at the beginning and makes it a little easier to start selling if you can identify those people. And there's a lot of information about early adopters out there too, if you would like to learn more about that. But I think that's the key to a startup. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. I don't know if there's questions. I am willing to hang out if anybody would like to chat or ask questions. I'm happy to stay on for a while, but I know some people may need to get back.
Yeah, let me ask this question really quick, and thank you so much. Do you have a slide on here with your information that they can?
Yes. Let's go back to the beginning. Uh-oh. I probably should have done this a different direction. Here we go. So this is my email address, and you're welcome to send an email if you would like, and I'm happy to answer those. And if you'd like to chat, then just send me an email that you'd like to chat, and we'll find a time to do that.
Perfect. So the question is in the chat. One of the questions, it says, and I am going to send a copy of the presentation to everyone who registered for this session. So you will get that presentation for all the sessions going forward. We will send the presentation for each session that you attend if you register for it. So do you know if your spouse is entitled to your business if you are married? They're currently going through a divorce and they want to wait until, should I wait until the divorce is finalized before I start my business? Great question.
That's an excellent question. I will tell you that I went through a divorce when I owned a business, and it was very difficult and very It wasn't a pleasant experience, and I'm not a lawyer. And I think that the best answer for that question would come from a lawyer, particularly a divorce attorney who understands the community property laws in the state. My gut reaction is that if any of your community property was used in establishing the business or contributing to the business, that yes, that's community property and that could be an issue for you. But I think that's a fantastic question, and you are smart to ask it now. But I would certainly get with your divorce attorney and find out what they think about that and the impact that it might have.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I will say that question came up in our kickoff. And the answer, and I'm relaying the answer that was provided by an attorney, was yes, if that business has generated revenue, if it's in rev generating stage while you're married before your divorce is final, they will have they will be allowed to have access or to what you made prior to the divorce. But anything you make after the divorce is final in that business, they will not. So that was a question that came up in that session, and that was the answer that was provided, but confirm, trust, but confirm.
Yeah, and I think everybody's situation can be different too. You know, I think I know in my situation, they looked at a lot. They looked very carefully at the funds that were invested in the business at the beginning, and any funds that were added to the business along the way, and what part ownership percentage was his. All those kinds of things got really messy and very stressful. So if you could eliminate that stress by waiting a little bit, yeah, I'd go for it.
I agree. All right, any other questions? Some of the questions that were in the chat were more logistics related and things that I can answer, so I answered them. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope you can join us next month. The month of April is financial literacy month, and so our sessions next month will be around funding your business and then business taxes.
Ooh.
So I hope you all can join us and get more information on that again at gptx.org/smallbiz. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
All right. Yes, this was recorded. We will send the link to the recording as well.